What's ultimately in the mind of the pedophile is not what he's going to do to the child, but what he can teach the child to do to him. Because after all, he's in there for his sexual pleasure, certainly not for the pleasure of the child. And so in typical fashion, he starts out doing things that to the mind of, remember, this is the throwaway son, the ignored one, the stupid, the weakling, the mediocre, the sissy. So what must it mean to this little boy at 6 that his father now has this special time with him? And the fact of the matter is, sadly enough for the children, sexual molestation, when it isn't violent, has a pleasurable side. It feels nice. And that's how you get the kids hooked. And you tell them, this is our time, and this is our secret. And that entire family was structured to worship José Menéndez. And so the notion that now Erik would have his own special thing with this man was more than any child would resist, particularly the timid one. And it moves along to the point where José can finally get what he wants out of it, and around when Erik is 7 years old, he testifies they're living in the Mill Roadhouse, and his father teaches him how to give a mouth massage. And Erik describes, though, that it wasn't too successful because he gagged because his father pushed his penis in and he hurt him. And here is a medical record that has one of these mysterious little unexplained entries, and it is dated December 13, 1977, and Erik is 7 years old, and it says, hurt posterior pharynx, uvula and soft palate, seen in emergency room, Princeton Medical Center, 12/12/77, 8 p.m. Follow-up today, healing well, symptomatic treatment. Now, I can't prove that that is penile insertion, but they can't prove that it isn't, because it is consistent with that kind of injury in a small child's throat. Erik says that his father stopped being nice when he was 11. And in the way that victims blame themselves, Erik thought it was because by that point he had stopped swimming. Well, I don't know why José Menéndez's sadistic side took over at this point, but it did. And the sex became violent. This is when Erik starts to formulate these funny kid words, this special language for what's going on, and he calls this form of sex from then on knees, because he has to get down on his knees to do this. And then he gets the lecture when he cries after this, that why can't you be like your brother? I'm ashamed to have you as a son. You're not going to really measure up as a Menéndez, because he's showing signs of weakness. I've already gone over several times the incident of rape. I find what's interesting is that Erik tells you that the worst episode, the one that's most engraved in his head, is not the rape, which occurs when he's between 11 and 12, but the very first time his father was violent. And I think it's interesting that he says that if he were making it up, if he had not been a victim of this, and I think to our just common knowledge, you'd say, oh, when he sodomized me, when he raped me, that was the worst. That's not what he says. He says the worst one is the first violent one, the first time that knees happens and he's ordered to swallow. And why it's the worst one is because it's the first time his father isn't nice. It blows out the notion that this is somehow love. What was important to Erik was that he thought, no matter how else his father treated him at other times in his life, that what was going on between them sexually was a form of special love. And when his father becomes violent with him, he knows it isn't love. It's just another thing I have to put up with. And now what his father is showing is the same kind of disdain and dislike and belittling of him that goes on in every other aspect of his relationship with his father. And I don't think a liar could have made that up.